Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the very last live session, UXI 105 Design Technologies. In this session, we are going to cover week 8, which is about review and reflection. So let's go ahead and get started. For today's agenda, we're going to, of course, do a course overview. We will also discuss week 8, and then I will give you some resources and some reminders. And as always, this live session is being recorded. You can find this live session under the announcements as well as the class YouTube page, but you can also find previous live sessions underneath the web meetings. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you missed this live session, please watch the entire session and then send your takeaways to me via Canvas so you can receive credit. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So, the topic this week is review and reflection. This week, you will reflect on what you've learned in this course. You will also complete a career readiness assignment. Throughout this certificate program, you will have several assignments related to career readiness to help prepare you for the workforce. So, here is the first question. What is your biggest takeaway from this course? Now, again, this is a replay. So, if you were not able to attend the live session, make sure to go ahead and submit your takeaway to me via Canvas so you can receive credit. Now, let's discuss the week 8 objectives. The topic, of course, is review and reflection. So, here are some of the topics that we are going to cover. We're going to refresh your memory about what you read and learned, reflect on the concepts learned in the course, submit all late work for credit before the deadline, which we'll discuss later on in this live session, as well as provide you with feedback from me, the instructor in class, in a survey. So, from the entire 8 weeks, we're going to just go over tidbits of all the topics that we discussed, as well as some objectives. So, for week 1, we discussed fundamental elements of design. The week 1 objectives topic, fundamental elements of design, we identified digital design file types and their uses, developed a figure slash ground study using dots and white space, explained the use of RGB and CMYK color modes, and recognized methods for color balance and adjustments in composition. Now, here is the second takeaway that I would love for you to submit to me via Canvas. What are the 9 most common file formats? And this is something that we reviewed in week 1 and week 2. So I just want to gauge where you are and if you can remember all 9 most common file formats that we discussed. So, do you guys remember raster versus vector? Here's a photo to show you the difference between raster versus vector. And then when we talk about the 9 most common digital design file types, you are able to break up those file types in to the raster file formats and the vector file formats. So the raster file formats are JPEG, GIF, PNG, TIFF, and PSD. And then you have your vector file formats, which is AI, INDD, EPS, and SVG. Also, in week 2, we discuss what is Adobe Illustrator. Some objectives that we talked about in regards to the topic of vector artwork is differentiating between vector, raster, and time-based graphics, sketch illustrations using transfer techniques, using tools such as the pen, shape, color, pathfinder, and text to create illustration, and then utilize design principles such as depth, space, and contrast. Also, in week 2, we discussed the difference between RGB versus CMYK. And if you can remember, RGB is used for digital designs that are displayed on any type of screen. And some examples of the best file formats for RGB are JPEGs, PSD, PNG, and GIFs. Then you have your CMYK color mode, and CMYK is for any project that will be physically printed, not viewed on a screen. So PDFs, AI, and EPS are the best file formats for CMYK. We also discussed the 4 different types of logo variations. You have your primary logo, which is your main logo artwork that is normally used in printed collateral. Then you have your secondary logo, which is typically more streamlined version, and it does lose some of the necessary graphic elements, but it's often used for web navigation, smaller prints, or even email signatures. Another is the submark logo, which is designed for smaller spaces in mind, such as your social media icons, stickers, and even mobile web navigation. And then lastly, we have your favicon, which is the smallest logo iteration, and it should still immediately be recognized. And typically, it is no larger than 20 pixels wide because it is perfect to fit within the website browser tab. And then we discuss the 4 types of fonts. And a good rule of thumb is when you are creating the design it is best to limit yourself between 2 to 3 fonts. That way you should aim for consistency and cohesion within your design. Now, what is Adobe Photoshop? This is a topic that we discussed in week 3. Some objectives that we discuss in regards to rasterizing your artwork is editing, resizing, and optimizing techniques for web versus print, using Photoshop tools such as selection, spot healing, clone stamp, and image mask. Also, repurpose existing photos to create a new composition and explain the difference between copyright and fair use in design. So, in regards to Adobe Photoshop, we also discussed the differences and similarities between the Adobe application interfaces. So, in week 2, we discussed Adobe Illustrator, but in week 3, we discussed Adobe Photoshop. But they had a lot of similar interface elements. One would be the image size dialog box. Another is the export dialog box. Then you have your tools panel, which this is something that you will see across all Adobe applications. And some tools may have different names but have the same purpose. And then another is the color picker dialog box. You have your character panel, also your paragraph panel, and then you have your layers panel. So, what is the difference between copyright versus fair use? Do you remember? Copyright in design is used to protect your original artwork. And in the United States, every designer automatically owns the copyright to their original artwork, except for in the work for hire situations. And then you have fair use in design, which allows you to use copyright protected work. It does not allow you to claim work as your own. However, it does allow you to use some copyright free artwork within your design so you don't have to deal with any legal issues. Now, moving on to week 4 overview, we discuss what is Adobe InDesign. And when we talk about Adobe InDesign, it is best to understand when to use Adobe InDesign. You can use Adobe InDesign to create books and reports, brochures and flyers, as well as newsletters, interactive PDFs and presentations, master pages, text wrap and table of contents, ebook layouts, and digital publishing. So, some objectives in regards to the topic of page layout design. We discussed creating a unique promotional piece using Adobe InDesign, also utilizing page elements such as margins, columns, flow lines, master pages, and gutters. And we also discuss using a grid variation to lay out a design, as well as combining elements of vector and raster based imagery. So let's go over page elements in Adobe InDesign. And as you will notice, some of these elements you will see in other Adobe applications. We discuss margins, columns, flow lines, master pages, and gutters. We also discuss the different types of grids, which you will notice you'll see it also not just in Adobe InDesign, but also in Adobe XD. In week 5, we discuss what is Adobe Premiere Pro. Some objectives for the topic of time-based media is that we created timeline-based project using Adobe Premiere Pro. We discuss how to import your footage, audio, and images, creating objects, layers, and text effects, extract and remove objects from layers, as well as using tools to create animated objects and effects. When to use Adobe Premiere Pro. Video editing, recording, and previewing. Also creating animated intro and outro bumpers to videos. Adding lower thirds and titles to your videos. Adding stylish visual effects and transitions. Color correction and color grading, as well as audio mixing and enhanced editing. So here's the typical Premiere Pro workflow. So it starts with you importing your footage, sequencing and rough cuts, playback, then adding your transitions, effects, and titles. Also, adding sound effects and music, and then ending with encoding and rendering your footage. Another thing that we discuss in regards to the topic of Adobe Premiere Pro is the overview of the panel's workspace. So you have your source monitor, which is focused on playing back individual clips, your project panel, which is the place that links your project's media files, such as your video clips, your audio files, graphics, still images, and sequences. Then you have your program monitor, which plays back the entire sequence you're working within the timeline panel. And then the timeline panel allows for unlimited visuals and audio tracks. And then we discussed in week 6 what is Adobe XD. So when do you use Adobe XD? You use Adobe XD to design low fidelity and high fidelity websites or mobile applications. You can create sketches, digital wireframes to lay out your ideas and text, as well as images, and export and share those designs. Some objectives that we discussed in regards to the topic of interface design in Adobe XD is we explain the basics of prototyping experiences and user flow, utilize tools such as margins, columns, and artboards in Adobe XD, and then we also created a unique and responsive landing page interface with prototype click flows. One thing that was very important in regards to Adobe XD is to discuss the differences between UX and UI designers. UX designers are considered interaction designers, and they are considered an expert in wireframes, prototypes, and research. Meanwhile, you have UI designers or visual designers who focuses on color and typography and plans the visual aesthetics. So they're considered experts in mockups, graphics, and layouts. Prototyping experience or experience prototyping. It is used to understand, explore, and communicate what it might be like to engage with the product, space, or system we are designing. Also, it allows designers to show and test the solution through active participation of the final users that interact with mockups of specific service touchpoints. So, If you are moving into UX, UI, then you will hear the term fidelity. Now, what is fidelity or design fidelity? It refers to the level of detail, functionality, and realism. There are three levels of fidelity. You have low fidelity, medium fidelity, and high fidelity. The two most common that you will hear is low fidelity and high fidelity, but fidelity overall is based around the prototyping and wireframing of how it conveys the look and feel of the product. So here's some examples of lo-fi and hi-fi. So you have your lo-fi, which is what we created when we did sketches and paper wireframes. And then you have your hi-fi is when you are towards the end of creating your design. And now you move from your paper wireframes to a more realistic feel or considered a prototype before, and this is also before you launch your product. Another definition that you'll hear is user flow. Now, this is something that we previously discussed in week 6. User flow, a chart or diagram showing the path a user will take in an application to complete a task. It depicts a physical journey of the user through an application or software. It starts when the user opens the app or website and then goes through all the different screens and options. Then it ends when they leave or finish using your app or website. And here's an example of user flow with a website. They specifically start on the main page. The home page might be the first page that they might enter. And then they would click on the website navigation and travel through different pages on the website. And it ends when that user clicks out of the website, depending on which page they end in the website. And that also applies to your mobile application as well. So let's discuss Adobe XD layout tools. Now, these are terms that you previously heard in our past week overview, but in Adobe XD, some layout tools are margins. Then you have your columns and artboard. So in week 7, we discussed putting everything all together. So your week 7 objectives in regards to putting everything together, we are revising and refining your promotional materials based on feedback, presenting a collection of your design pieces to stakeholders, demonstrating professional communication, as well as refreshing your memory on what you read and learned. We also discuss what is a mock-up. This is something that you're going to implement within your portfolio. Here's an example of a mock-up, and we had more information on mock-ups in the previous session, session 7 a.m. So if you would like to go back and refresh your memory, you can definitely do that. And I will also leave the links to these slides for you to have for future reference. And here's some examples of a portfolio. So you can create your portfolio either in Adobe Portfolio, Portfolio Loom. There are other sites, Behance, Dribble. You can create portfolios there too. But you can also click on these links here and view other portfolios just to get an idea of what it would take to create your own portfolio. Here's some assignments that we'll go over in regards to week 8. So, in week 8, there are no readings or learnings in this week. However, you must engage and complete your yellow dig discussion post by Wednesday. That is the due date. So, again, start early to finish early. You want to start early so that you can engage with your classmates, and I will also engage with you early on in the week so that you can gain up to your 1,000 points. Next, you will have to complete a career readiness assignment, as well as Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. is the last day to submit all late work or request an incomplete grade for a 10-day extension. Now, if you do have to request an incomplete grade, now this is very rare. So, if you are in this situation, you can receive an incomplete. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me as I am here to help. And I am so glad to have been your instructor for the entire 8 weeks. And again, you can reach out to me via the text or Canvas if you have any questions. But that is all for our very last live session. And I will talk to you guys a little bit later. Bye.